Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle, and welcome to the National Park Adventure, Crossing America. A special thanks to the National Park Foundation for allowing us to be here today at the Jewel Cave National Monument near Custer in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And as you can notice, we are actually in a cave. Ranger Aimee, this is a beautiful place to work. Thank you so much for having us here today.
It is, yeah. Thank you for being here.
So Ranger Aimee, how did you get here to the Jewel Cave National Monument?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a journey. But one of the subjects I loved most in school when I was growing up was history. And my dad always said, you should be a tour guide in a cave. I didn't really see how that was related, but I did give it a try summer of 2009. Where I'm from in the northeast corner of Missouri, there's a cave called the Mark Twain Cave. And so I worked as a tour guide there, really enjoyed it. But I was like, how do I do this as a career ultimately? And so summer 2010, I got a position as a park ranger with the Park Service in a place called Wilson's Creek National Battlefield, Southwest Missouri. And I was like, that's it. I should be a park ranger with the National Park Service. So after I graduated college, just worked as a seasonal park ranger, Carlsbad Caverns National Park in New Mexico, Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park in Colorado. And I was able to get a year-round position at Muir Woods National Monument, a little coast redwood forest north of San Francisco. I was there for about 3.5 years. And then my first official permanent position at Lava Beds National Monument way up in northeastern California. So I had worked, half my sites were kind of sites with caves, and so I happened to see a job here a little over a year ago, and I'd always wanted to work at Jewel Cave. Just it's super long, and I hadn't been to the Black Hills in 20 years, but from what I vaguely remembered, thought it was also a very pretty area. So it's been really fun to be here this last year.
Well, thanks, Dad, for encouraging that way back, because now you are in a cave working.
Yeah.
So we're at Jewel Cave National Monument. This is such a beautiful place, above ground and below ground, right?
Definitely.
So tell us a little bit about this place.
Yeah, Jewel Cave is the third longest cave in the world. It wasn't really known to be very long till in the 60s and 70s, thanks to a couple explorers named Herb and Jan Kahn. And the cave itself wasn't really even known about, we don't believe, to about 1900. Native Americans have lived in the area for thousands of years. They maybe knew about the opening, but there's no evidence of that or that they ventured in. So then the first folks who get credited with exploring Jewel Cave are two brothers, Frank and Albert Michaud. They started first exploring it in 1900, and yeah, again, those later explorers kind of helped to open it up and help us realize there's more. And yeah, today we're at 215.05 miles at the time of filming, but that's subject to change. So we still have folks exploring it, and then on the surface, we protect about 1,200 acres of a really beautiful ponderosa pine forest.
Well, this cave, tell us about the formations or what we might see here when we're visiting this cave.
Yeah, majority of Jewel Cave is actually fairly dry. So we don't have a lot of the kind of secondary cave formations, those speleothems. We do have some. We have some stalactites, some stalagmites, columns where they meet. There are areas in the cave that have those. But the formation that Jewel Cave is really known for is a formation called spar, S-P-A-R. It's where it's like a 4-letter word for when there's a crystal that has a shape. And so we have two types here. We have nailhead spar, it's kind of a little flatter on the top, and dogtooth spar, it's a little pointier. And so as you're strolling through Jewel Cave, in the crevices, you're more going to see that dogtooth spar. It forms when there's not as much circulation of water, versus the nailhead spar. It can be on top of calcite layers like 6 to 10 inches thick as you're strolling through the cave. And so we see a little more of that on our scenic tour, which is our most popular cave tour. But a lot of the spar, that's the jewels of Jewel Cave, and that's really what we're known for.
Well, that was my next question. How did we get this name?
The Michauds went in and they start seeing all this sparkling stuff. They get really excited initially, thinking maybe it's quartz. That can be evidence that there being gold here. There is gold in other parts in the Black Hills. That brought a lot of folks here. But they pretty quickly realized it's calcite. It's, hard as your fingernail, worth about just as much. So unfortunately, there wasn't any monetary value for them. They did go ahead instead of a mining claim. They also developed this a bit for tourism before it ultimately got protected in 1908. But that's pretty much it, because of those beautiful calcite crystals.
So you said 1908. Is that actually the date this became a monument?
Yeah, February of 1908. I believe February 7th.
And so this is in the Black Hills. So the Black Hills is a little bit foreign to me. Tell me about what the Black Hills are in South Dakota.
Yeah, the Black Hills is an island in the plains. It's this really wonderful area in the western part of the state, even extends into Wyoming. There's also Black Hills in Wyoming. But there was a huge tectonic uplift around 30 to 60 million years ago. And there had been a big shallow sea, sedimentary rocks, and then igneous and metamorphic below that. And with that tectonic uplift, that raised all the really cool igneous and metamorphic rocks up to the more at the top layers, and then more around the bottom you have the sedimentary, and within that layer also a lot of caves here in the Black Hills. But it's basically, just because of a big tectonic uplift, we have these really cool looking spires, the needles, cathedral spires, things you get to drive through. It's kind of adds to this area and the altitude that we have here. It's really beautiful.
Are there any animals that love this place too? Any animals in here?
In the cave, not so much. We have more of what I'd call the troglodyne variety, your cave guest. Deep in the cave, since we don't really have enough water to suffice or make the animals very happy, we don't really actually have super robust cave life beyond, just the opening, which we still thus far only know of one original opening, the one that the Michauds found in 1900. And so there you'd find we have 9 different types of bats. About 7 of them use the cave. Some do roost in trees. Your pack rats and some snakes. And we do have like cave crickets and spiders, but we don't really see them too deep in the cave. Mainly that life is in the front.
When did the tours start?
Well, Michauds initially are kind of just leading little tours through what little part of the cave was known, lantern tours. And it was only known the cave was about 2 miles until Herb and Jan Kahn started exploring deeper depths. And so, the lantern tour has been going on. And then in 1972, that's whenever we started showing more areas that had been found thanks to the Kahns. And so the room we're standing in right now, this is the target room. This is the room we have our Discovery Tour presentation, which is a 20-minute presentation. And it's also the room where we start our full-on hour and a half, or hour 20-minute, ends up being a little longer sometimes, but hour and 20-minute scenic tour. It starts here, and then you travel through a half-mile loop and see some of the most scenic areas of the cave. So those were in 1972. So 50th anniversary of the scenic tour.
Very nice. Are there other types of tours that you have here?
One other. The other one is our wild caving tour. And I'd honestly have to look when that one started, but probably around the same time of the scenic tours, because the Discovery tours actually came later also. But that is a 4-hour to 5, a caving adventure on a 2/3 mile loop. You also start here in this room. You go on the scenic tour route, just a bit, and then you hop off and you're caving, and you end right here. And actually, that's why this bench is here. That's where folks change their shoes afterwards, because you just get coated in a mineral that we have in our cave, manganese, and it can just coat your skin and your shoes. And so we don't track that on our concrete here. We have folks bring a second set of shoes, but it's a really intense tour. I personally don't lead it. I've been on it a couple times.
I was going to ask, have you been on it?
I have. I would like to lead it, but it takes a while to get checked off on that one. Our folks who manage our volunteer caver program are also the ones who are really invested in checking off our guides for that. And it takes a few trips. So I went on a few to just kind of watch them in action, and I'm really wiped afterwards. It's frozen pizza for dinner. It's a pretty tiring tour, but it's really fun.
Now I noticed that outside the visitor center, there's a little cement block, and it says you have to be able to crawl through there to be able to go on the tour. So we're talking pretty tight spaces,
pretty tight.
right?
Yeah, and that block is honestly, I wouldn't say harder, but that block, it is hard though, because it's totally going horizontal. The smallest point on that tour you have to crawl through, it's 8.5 inches high by 24 inches wide. It's known as the brain drain, very affectionately termed there. And whenever you're crawling through that, there is kind of a down slope, so that helps you a little bit. And folks, if they try that block outside, they can't fit through it like this, we also recommend trying on your back. Try one arm first. There's a few techniques, but if you try all those and you don't fit, unfortunately, you have to go on a different tour. So we had a few times this summer where we had to pop somebody on a scenic tour instead, because we don't want them to get stuck.
Have you ever had anyone get stuck?
No, not permanently or anything.
Well,
Everyone who came into the cave has came out, so that's good.
That is great news. I also read in the brochure from Jewel Cave National Monument that you have something called a historical area.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that historical area?
Yeah, that's where, really, that's where everything used to be. That they thought, again, there's still, that until we know this day, just that one original opening. But when they only thought the cave was a couple miles, that's where folks would go to just see the little bit of the cave on their lantern tour. So that area was developed in the 30s. There's a cabin there that was built by the Civilian Conservation Corps, and that served as the initial ranger station and visitor center. And so the rangers living there, they also were there with their spouse, selling tickets, and from there the tour would start. And there's a little path that goes behind that cabin to the original opening of the cave. And we still have those lantern tours from like early June to early September. And we cease those because that's whenever the bats start to go back into that area to hibernate for the winter. And also, unfortunately, then when our seasonal staff their season will end, they'll start to migrate. So we had September 10th was our last of those tours this year.
I love the historical connection to the CCC
Yeah.
because many of our national park sites have a connection to the CCC where they went and started getting them moving, right?
Yeah,
So that was
absolutely.
a great organization at the time to make these caves and these scenic waterways and trails and mountain areas available to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Built that cabin and also helped build a trail that we still have. The stairs on that lantern tour are modeled from the ones built by the Civilian Conservation Corps. Very narrow stairs, but they're great stairs. And whenever it was like, we may as well keep them of that look. Whenever we've redone them, we've kept them kind of that same style that they did.
Well, we know that kids love to be competitive, right? And maybe national park sites in a way too, because you guys are 200 and some miles long, but there's more places we can go, right? So who actually does that exploring?
It's volunteers, actually. Yeah, I mean, and some are folks who do work for the park and they're volunteering on their days off to explore the cave. But others do other things. They're people of many different backgrounds, just happen to love caving. They are members of a local caving club, a grotto, the Paja Sapa Grotto. And I imagine they have to go through a bit of a checkoff process. I personally have not been checked off myself, but they're going to have to have a few trips under their belt before they go on a longer trip. Because those volunteers who do explore the cave, they can be in groups of anywhere from about 3 to 6 people. We have about a dozen pretty regular volunteers. They can go on a trip of just one day. That's about how long Herb and Jan Con used to go for. Days, though, even like 15, 16 hours. That's a long day. To today, we can go up to 4 days and 3 nights because we do have established camps throughout the cave that they can stay in.
What materials would they take with them on these volunteer cave explorations? What do they need with them?
There's a few things at the camps. There's tarps and sleeping bags and camp stoves. And then they take these little cubies that they can collect water as well. But they only strive to carry about 15 pounds. And within that, it's not very much for a multi-day trip, but they're going to have, their food, something to carry out any scraps or human waste that they make, and then the different materials and tools they're going to need to measure the cave. Someone's probably going to be the mapper, so they're going to have like a little notebook and a pencil. They're going to have survey tape. We, in this cave of over 210 miles, 215, we have over 40,000 survey markers throughout the cave. And so that's just, little pieces of orange flagging tape, compasses. There's the little machines that will measure from one point to another using lasers. So little things like that, but they're still the most effective tools in helping to find more cave.
Well, I think that's going to lead us to our challenge for our kids. So kids, you know what to do. We use the UN Sustainability Goals as our lens to help us tackle problems that we face in the world. Now, this is not a problem per se, it's more of an adventure. So we want you to team up with Jewel Cave National Monument and come up with some new type of equipment, maybe some new apparel, maybe some new things that the volunteers can use to keep exploring, because they're a little ways off, but Mammoth Cave, they're on your site. I mean, I think they're coming after you. So what can you create? Could you create some new types of boots that would be more comfortable, that would also have lights on them? Could you create your clothing to have some reflective pieces so that cavers from behind could see that you're up there? Maybe you create some new types of food that they could use. Take NASA for some inspiration there. Maybe you can take some more fashionable ideas on the hats that they wear and the headlamps. Really, it's up to you what you can create to help Jewel Cave continue this exploration and make this longer than 215 miles, which I think is going to go longer than that because you've got some volunteers. We're going to tie that to UN goal number 9, which is industry, infrastructure, and you're going to focus on innovation. Maybe you're the next Columbia or REI or Patagonia. You could market your stuff to these places and they could use your ideas as new cave exploration equipment and apparel. We cannot wait to see what you create. Make sure that you tag us at Dacia 92 and also the National Park Foundation and Jewel Cave National Monument, because they're going to want to see what you create. I can't wait to see what they create. That could be a lot of fun. Maybe there's an exhibit upstairs with the caving clothing. Maybe in 20 or 30 years, their designs will be there and your new volunteers can model those.
Yes.
Sounds good?
Sounds good.
We love visiting national park sites. We know that as of this filming today, there's over 424 of these in our country. With that being said, we have kids who are really looking forward to maybe a career in the National Park Service. Can you look at that middle camera right there and just give them a little bit of advice?
Okay. Yeah, I do get asked that question quite a bit, and I tell folks maybe start by volunteering. If you have a national or state park near you, I think that's a great idea. And it also kind of depends too, I guess, on what type of park ranger you want to be. In the National Park Service, we do very different things. I'm the type of park ranger, as you can maybe tell, that talks. I'm an interpretive park ranger. And so when folks ask me specifically about this job, maybe encourage them to do a position that has some sort of customer service implemented into it, and that helps a lot. Something where you're speaking with people, working at front desk. But volunteering, going to volunteer.gov, that's a great way to get started. And you can be a volunteer at any age. And then when you're a little older, maybe in college, look at doing internship programs. And then, yeah, apply on usajobs.gov. That's where all of the federal positions are at, and we will start applying for seasonal positions in like December, January, and February. So yeah, you can really get involved at a young age, and yeah, kind of continue all through if you want and get started really early. So volunteer.gov is kind of a good place to start and move on from there.
And you could be here working with Ranger Aimee because she's looking to hire a few new people maybe in the future. And I think she likes it here, so she might be here for quite a while. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. We want to thank the National Park Foundation for allowing us to be here, to Ranger Aimee, and to Jewel Cave National Monument. Again, we cannot wait to see what you create, but more than that, we're excited that we're teaching you and you're learning how to be a good human. So from Dr. Drizzle and Ranger Aimee, we are out of here.